Hello everyone, welcome to Code and Learn. So in the last lesson, what we did was to set up our project to generate the Go code from the proto files using the Buf binary, which is a wraparound proto-C. Before proceeding ahead with the project, what I want to do in this lesson is to set up the tooling. So we are going to set up linting using Buf, then also going to set up linting using golangci-lint, and we will also use Buf to detect any breaking changes with the proto. So let's do that. I'm just going to add a command here to say generate the Go code from proto files. First, let us add the lint command for proto. So we are again going to use Buf to lint our proto files. Linting and formatting helps us keep things consistent. So here I'm going to name the target lint proto, which is again going to be a Frony target. So we are using the Go tool directive to run the Buf binary. Go tool Buf lint, which is the command to lint the proto files. And I'm going to provide it a config file using the config flag buf.yaml, which is what we have here. So in here, if you see for lint, we are using the standard and the service suffix rules. So here we are telling Buf to use the config, that is buf.yaml, to lint the proto files. Now let's try to run it. Lint proto. So as you can see, it's throwing a bunch of errors. The first error is that news response is used as request and response type for multiple RPCs. That is, we are using news response here for 2 RPC calls. Usually we would want each request and response to be different. So we will change that. Next, it's saying that new request that we have here should be named to create request to make it more idiomatic to proto definitions. And the third one is news response should be named to create response. Similarly, we have a bunch of other linting errors. So let's work through them to resolve it. First thing I'm going to do is update the news request to say create request. That is to create the news, and we will update here, save it, clear the console and run the linting again. Make lint proto. You can see that error is resolved. Now the next one is news response is used multiple times. So what I'm going to do is segregate into two things. First is create response. That is the response of the create method. Just going to copy this and paste it here. This is going to be a duplicate, which is get response. Let's update it in the service proto definition, create response and get response. Now let's try the linting again. All the other errors have been resolved. We need to rename the news ID request to get news or get request. Get request, clear the console, try again. And as you can see, linting is now satisfied with our changes. And with that, you can see that we have introduced consistency between the naming. That is create request, create response, get request and get response. Let us run make generate proto to update the generated code. So that should update the generated code. Let's add a command here to say lint the proto files. Next, I'm going to add a command to detect any breaking changes with our proto files. This is one of the reasons why we are using Buf for this project, because it adds functionality on top of proto-C compiler, like detecting the breaking change between the proto files. I'm going to name the target lint breaking. Inside it, I'm going to use go tool Buf. The command is breaking, and we need to provide a against flag, which should have the value to compare our current proto files against the destination. I'm going to use the remote Git repository for this. So what we are saying here is that detect any breaking changes with our current implementation and compare it against the code that we have committed into main, or the proto definitions that we have committed into main. I can do that by specifying the URL for the Git repo, which in our case is github.com/codeandlearn1991 news gRPC.git. And I want it to be compared against the branch main. So now if I run the target, that is make lint breaking, you will see it's detecting breaking changes. That is previously present message news request has been deleted from the proto file. This is because we renamed it from news request to create request. And the other issues raised by Buf breaking detection are related to the refactoring we did with the naming. So for now, we can ignore these errors. So now the question arises, why do we want to detect any breaking changes with our proto files? This is because it is a requirement to maintain backwards compatibility. If you change your proto file like we did here, you risk breaking existing code that was generated from the previous version of the file. If the service or the client is updated with the newly generated code that contains breaking changes, it may no longer be able to correctly interpret the data sent from the client. This can lead to error, data corruption, and complete communication failures, which is one of the reasons why we have v1 here in the directory path. So any breaking changes like these should be introduced with the version update. But for our case, this is fine because we are still designing the API for the gRPC service. Now you may ask, what are considered breaking changes? For that, I will link the documentation for Proto that will tell you what changes are considered as breaking changes. Some of the examples are, if we change the field number here from 1 to 10, that is considered a breaking change. Or if I delete a field like this, that too is considered a breaking change. Let us get back to setting up our project with the Makefile. So till now, we have added linting for breaking change, linting the proto, and generate proto targets. Next, let us add the golangci-lint. You could use Go tool to install golangci-lint, but golangci-lint recommends to download it from the source. So we are going to do that. For that, first I'm going to define a go bin path. That is, we want to install it locally in our project so that if we are pulling this code on a different machine, we install the same version of the binary. So for go bin, I'm going to use current working directory and /.bin. Next, I'm going to define the golangci-lint version, which is 1.64.5. And then let us define the shell so that the go binary is in the path variable. I'm just going to arrange this alphabetically. So generate goes there. Let me close the terminal, lint breaking, and then lint proto. Now I'm going to add a target to install the tools we have. So I'm going to name the target install tools. First, we create the go binary directory if it doesn't exist. First thing we do is install the golangci-lint from its source. And at the end, we use the go install tool to install the tools defined in our go mod, like the Buf CMD. So that's all the setup for tools. Clear the console. If I do make install tools, it's going to install the golangci-lint binary and then do a go install tool. That is to pull the Buf CLI. Next, I'm going to add the tidy target, which is just to run go mod tidy. At the top, I'm also going to add the format target. That is format our go code with golangci-lint. Let's run it. That is working fine. For the config values to be used by Go CLI, I'm just going to copy paste what we had in the last project. Create the file golangci.yaml and then paste what we had from the previous project. Save it, try running the make format again, and it's throwing some errors, which I will let you fix on your own. So with this, we have our basic dev tool setup ready. In the next lesson, we are going to actually implement the gRPC calls or the RPC calls defined here. That is create and get. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. If you have any questions, please post a comment under the video or reach out to our Discord server. Until next time, happy coding.